This is hilarious. I have to share this. I don't know any other way to share this than to do what I'm doing right now. This is on something called Good Lion TV. That's brand new to me. I've never heard of this before. A friend shared it with me. But this guy cracked me up. And I just did a search for it on the internet. I could not find it. Watch this guy. He's funny. He's talking about a quote-unquote controversial topic, and his topic of conversation can make some people uncomfortable, but this is funny, and I want to share it. So,
look. They want everybody to forget and forgive everything that happened during the pandemic. We were all in the dark. We were all afraid. Like, nah, bitch. Like, that was like we all got kidnapped and put together on an island, and then all of y'all bastards were like, we should eat them. And we're like, what the fuck? And then now they took us off the island, and we're just looking at you on the ride home like, and you're like, oh, wasn't that crazy? And we're like, nah, bitch, you tried to eat us. I didn't kick you out of those stores. I didn't ruin your job. I didn't tell you you couldn't come to the family reunion. I didn't tell you you had to drop dead of a heart attack because you didn't get the jab, so you're not welcome at this hospital. There ain't nothing to forgive on my side, baby boo. This is a you problem, and we're still talking about it.
And we're still talking about it. That guy just cracked me up. That was funny. I thought that was cute. So I had not heard of this pandemic amnesty. When I tried finding that video of that dude, that bearded dude laughing, he cracked me up. When I tried to find that video, though, I searched in there, whatever that video was called. What was it called? Let's declare a pandemic amnesty. Oh, commentary. I'm going to add commentary into my search. I might be able to find it. But when I punched that into the internet search, though, it was a whole thing. There's all kinds of videos about that. So apparently that's something out there in the consciousness, in the data sphere. It's Saturday morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, Saturday, November 5th. I don't know how long that conversation, what do they call it? Pandemic amnesty. I don't know that's a new phrase to me as of 5 o'clock this morning on Saturday, November 5th. The reason why I'm noting that is because I think that's a good example of how unaware I am to the latest stuff. Like, oftentimes there'll be things talked about, like, in conversations in different world, circles or whatnot, and with the presupposition that everybody knows what the latest, I'll call bullshit, what the latest bullshit is that the establishment is throwing out there. I'm not the next page, next chapter. I understand the theme of the book. I don't pay attention to, I try to give my attention to things that I'm looking to go to, that I want to create and be and, vibe with. So I don't always know the next page, next chapter in the overall story that's being written. I get the theme of the book. I don't need to know each damn page and chapter of that book. You know what I mean? So point of that is, pandemic amnesty. I hadn't heard of this until just now with that bearded dude laughing at it. And when I push it in there, apparently it's a conversation in the world because there's a whole bunch of videos. JP Sears had one. I'm going to watch JP Sears. He's Awaken with JP. He's a comedian. I find him funny. So I will actually, as soon as I shut this off, I'm going to watch the JP Sears, what I just found in that search. For that. So let's see what JP has to say. JP Sears, by the way, Awakening with JP, he gets his 18-minute.
Let's declare a pandemic amnesty. Let's just forget everything we said out of our emotional rage and did and treat people like we're crazy nuts and create division and advocate for dangerous policies. Let's just forget that. Amnesty.
I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Zoom. I'm going to do a screen thing, and let's watch this together. They call them reaction videos. I have not seen this. It's an 18-minute video. Let's do that now. Good morning. Okay, so I have just heard about this concept called pandemic amnesty. I don't truly know. I haven't heard it, how it's being sold in the world, so I don't really know what it's all about yet. Saw one TikTok style video of this bearded cat laughing. I don't know how I'm going to put this together yet or how I'm going to offer this. I may just give you all of the clips that led to me doing this, but I'm going to do a reaction video to... Excuse me. I'm going to do a reaction video to JP react to I'm gonna do a reaction video to a reaction video, I guess. But JP reacts. JP Sears, he's a comedian. He's got a YouTube channel called Awakening with JP, something like that. He's a comedian. I find him hilarious. And he likes to touch on relevant topics of the day. So, but anyway, 18-minute video, pandemic amnesty. Give me a break. So I'm going to learn about pandemic amnesty, how it's being sold, because I just heard one TikTok stock video that made me laugh. Punched in Google to try to find that video. And I found out that JP did a video on it. So let's learn more.
Let's declare a pandemic amnesty. Let's just forget everything we said out of our emotional rage and did and treat people like we're crazy nuts and create division and advocate for dangerous policies. Let's just forget that. Amnesty. Welcome to the JP Reacts channel, my freedom-loving friend. Today I want to talk about an article that was posted in The Atlantic by an Atlantic writer named Emily Oster. And the title of this, it's catching a lot of attention.
Your words,
for good reason. And the article is entitled, Let's Declare a Pandemic Amnesty.
Okay, so this started with one
subtitle. We need to forgive one another for what we did and said when we were in the dark about. Now, I agree with that. Really I do agree with that. This, and then there's something I think is dangerous about this.
He might have said.
Now, there's something I really.
Why does he say that word that way? Are we not allowed to have conversation? Is that why he had?
Agree with about this, and then there's something I think is dangerous about this.
Yeah, because honestly, agreed. Both are true. On a spiritual level, I think we need to give each other grace. I think we need to say namaste. You know what I'm saying? I think namaste presupposes that you acknowledge the God in you, and it is that God in you, that connected one in you, that recognizes that in your neighbor. That's the most powerful one word that really just, I would suggest, solves all of these worldly problems that we're having. Namaste, because it's a recognition of your true self, and it's a recognition of the trueness of your neighbor, the reality of your neighbor. At the same time, it's true that we are living in a world that requires us to be aware. I mean, if we're going to do anything as silly as lock our doors at night or feed ourselves, why do we feed ourselves? Evidently, we're presupposing we have some kind of value. Why do we lock our doors at night? Evidently, we are acknowledging that there is worldly threat in this world. So it's worthy of acknowledging the ridiculousness or in some of these ideas that would pose a threat. All right.
That I certainly don't agree with. I'll share both with you in just a second. But first, like any good, loving, freedom-loving American, just to use the word loving too much, when I saw this article, I thought, let's declare a pandemic amnesty. I don't know exactly what amnesty means. Sounds like a cool word. I think I know what it means. So I thought, I want to know for sure. So I looked it up. So just make sure freedom-loving brains are on the same page. Amnesty definition from Merriam-Webster, and apparently they're changing definitions left and right to account for Marxism that's trying to destroy objective truth in our country. But nonetheless, their definition of amnesty is the act of an authority, such as a government, by which pardon is granted to a large group of individuals So I think basically what she's suggesting is we as a collective pardon and just forget the crazy lunatics.
I think it's up to the victim to forgive. But if the government, if daddy steps in and tells the victims, you must forgive, we're going to forgive for you, that's not opening the door for true forgiveness, right? It's the victim's right to victim rights. That's a phrase I'm sure is used in other ways. But it's the victim's right. It's their. You were victimized. It is yours to sit with, to do with what you will. Now, I make my arguments and about the what I suggest we want to do with that. But for the parent to come in, Uncle Sam or whatever, for the elder to come in and force the victim to forgive and pardon the aggressor doesn't open the door for true forgiveness. He might be about to say something like that. I don't know, but
that were going on about their hysteria and making demands like, you get away from me, you put your mask and you're gonna kill me, you're gonna kill your grandma.
Your job.
What I think is good about this, I have the attitude, I think it's better to forgive people, but never forget. If we forgive and let that help us also forget, that means we don't learn lessons from past mistakes. That means we don't hold people accountable that need to be
allowed to happen again.
But also, I don't think it's a good idea to not forget, which we don't want to forget, but also not forgive. Right. Not forgiving, I mean, then we're drinking poison, thinking someone else is going to die. And all that does is hurt us. Not forgiving also creates more division within our country. And God knows we don't need that. I'll just say right off the bat, before we dive into some specifics of this article and some reactions to it, I see a second wave of people really waking up here in the past month. I think it started when the Pfizer executive was testifying in front of the European Union, and she admitted, we never did testing to see if this thing stops transmission. There was so much evidence building up, but then that seemed to be the straw that broke a lot of people's camel's back of denial in their mind, where now we have a second wave of people waking up, realizing there's a lot of deception that's been happening the past few years.
Hey, just real quick, because on his t-shirt here, he says, unwoke yourself. One thing that I have found cute about this premise of woke, it's an arrival. It's a past tense thing. It's like the learned. You don't want to be the learned, because the learned are beautifully equipped to inherit a world that no longer exists. You always want to be learning. I can't imagine I would ever have a stance that I have arrived as long as I am incarnated in this animated, as long as this apparatus, the technology of these vocal cords that is making these sounds to you right now, as long as this thing is animated and I am that I believe myself to be, this egoic, separated Matthew Sean Shorty Wells character, I can't imagine, and I hope that I never do feel like I am woke, awakened, done. I want to be awakening. I want to be ever evolved, current level consciousness, current day consciousness. And but woke, I don't want to be woke, because then I'm done. What awakening? And if I really if I'm willing to take stock and a good look at my lot in life and my emotional stance and ability and my emotional, it's not about your lot in life, external circumstances of the material shit. It's about your emotional stance is more important than anything. But if I'm saying that I'm arrived, and then I look at what I'm deeming as my arrival, which is maybe has emotions in it that are not in alignment with pure positive joy, happy, joy. Is this the arrival? Surely not. Is this you know what I mean? So it's a booby trap is what I'm trying to say. It's a booby trap to feel like you have arrived, right? I don't want to be the learned. I want to be the learner. perpetually learning, constantly, never-ending learning. As long as I am this egoic person that I believe to be, this human that's talking, I don't want to be woke. I want to be awakening. Anyway.
And then there were, my guess is you and I, we were awake to that deception pretty early on, if not from the get-go of the whole pandemic. Now, I think it's important when we see people in the second wave waking up that we don't greet them with judgment, ridicule, anger, like, what the wrong with you? Like, why were you such a moron buying into this horrible narrative built on deception and manipulation, just trying to control people? What an idiot you are. I think that's what the tyrants want us to do. I know that the tyrants know that people aren't as dumb as they hoped they are. The tyrants know more and more people are waking up. What strengthens the tyrants' ability to do tyrannical things is division. So I think they want freedom lovers to greet newly awakened people with division, anger, ridicule, judgment, because that means the freedom loving community becomes divided and we keep ourselves from growing. So I personally think when people are newly waking up, even if they did ridiculous, ignorant stuff for the past few years, even if they contributed to the backtracking of human consciousness going towards control, not freedom, I think it's very important that we greet them with open, loving arms. Forgiveness, certainly for any level of harm that they cause, and that's not for us to judge. We greet them with welcoming attitudes. We humans too. And we greet them with compassion, where we understand, like, I know you were deceived. And yes, it's your fault. We're not going to pretend like you have free will. You make your own choices. It's your fault. You were deceived. Yet we can have compassion and realize you were probably deceived because you are a good person wanting to do good things. And I can see how the tyrants used weaponized morality, where they prey on good people with these virtues of, here's the good thing to do. And if you want to be a good person, you need to do these good things. I think we need to have compassion for that. And I think that creates unity, not division. And we know divided we fall, united we stand. And stand we must, and stand we are as freedom lovers. I think that's very important context just to set here at the beginning as we dive into Emily Oster's let's declare a pandemic amnesty and just forget it. So I'm just going to breeze through a couple of the highlights of it. She starts off talking about, hey, in April 2020, me and my family were out taking a hike, and we had a family signal, which the person in front would use if someone was approaching on the trail and we needed to put on our masks. Once, when another child got too close to my then 4-year-old son on a bridge, her 4-year-old son yelled at her, social distancing. I think that's just interesting. That's the parent's fault. I mean, no 4-year-old's going to sit there and be like, I've reviewed the science and I'm making my own conclusion that I need to yell social distancing at a person in order to keep me and my family safe from transmission of this virus. And that's the parent's fault. No real point to that other than like, it's the parent's fault. Then in the second paragraph, she's talking about we were wearing cloth masks made out of old bandanas, which wouldn't have done anything anyway, like any other mask would have. But the thing is, we didn't know. Now, I know in my freedom-loving spleen, I get like this emotional charge when she says we didn't know. And yes, she didn't know. But my emotional charge that's like tempts me to judge this person, which I probably
the information was out there.
It tempts me to say, like, but you could have known. There was plenty of information out there about the realities, about like.
In case you hadn't heard this yet or don't know this yet about those cloth masks, the best analogy that I had heard was take a handful of sand and throw it at a chain link fence and see how the sand just goes to the other side of the fence. It goes right through the fence. The COVID flu stuff was like this big, and whatever the unit of measurement was, I don't care. That's a detail I don't care to retain. But it was, if the COVID flu was smaller than the fibers in the mask, so it would just go straight through, just like a chain. I thought that was a beautiful,
a much cleaner version of the truth of what was really going on in the beginning of this thing. You claim you didn't know. Yeah, but you could have known. Yeah. What you did was outsource your truth to the least trustworthy source of truth out there, the mainstream media. I think that's one of the lessons here. You know, do we need to forgive people? Yes, but I don't think we need yet to forgive the tyrants, the mainstream media, that we're creating deliberate deception. Because they're still aggressive. To be in a place where they and we are ready for this act of forgiveness, they need to acknowledge what they've done. They need to admit to, well, let's stop. Probably their crimes against humanity. One of the things I want to keep in mind when I'm looking at innocent people who maybe
it's hard to forgive when you're still transgressing,
and I'm forgiving them, which, by the way, like, who am I to judge them and need to forgive them in the first place? Kind of arrogant of me, but I'm probably arrogant. So as I forgive them and look at, like, cool, let's never forget. There's two things we never want to never forget. One is like the literal lessons, like what was it, the lie, what was the truth? Like, cool, bandanas didn't do anything. Cool, like, don't forget that. But the real thing to never forget here, that we don't want to glass over with this, let's just call it amnesty and like, let's just forget everything. We don't want to forget the principal lesson here, which is don't outsource your truth. Do your own thinking. Please. Don't discount other potential sources of truth just because you have an emotional charge and you're having this coercion coming at you that compels you to look at them, like smear them, discount them. Well, that's just a crazy lunatic conspiracy theorist. That's the principal thing to never forget here. Never outsource your truth. If we can remember that, history doesn't have to repeat itself. But if we forget that lesson, oh, now I'm outsourcing my truth because it's more convenient. It takes less energy for me to not do my own thinking. I'll fall for the emotional persuasion of giving my power away, my perspective, my truth to these outsourced outlets. If we forget that, history certainly will repeat itself. But the article goes on, and she's talking about, hey, you know, we thought the Johnson & Johnson shot was as good as the other shots. So it's like, yeah, that's something we got wrong. We need to grant amnesty to that. She goes on to talk about how there were disagreements about how long schools should have been closed for. She advocated for schools opening sooner, which is totally awesome. But when I look at the shallowness in which she's suggesting we grant amnesty to, she's talking about just at the level of what were the literal decisions people were making based on, she's using misinformation versus truth. And now we're realizing like, oh, the misinformation was way more truthful than the truth was. So my conclusion is I completely disagree with her perspective of we should grant amnesty about the pandemic, because what she's talking about granting amnesty to is just forgiving and forgetting those literal errors people have, those shallow literal errors on the different decisions people were making on a day-to-day basis. If we do that, we forget to go deeper. So I disagree with what she's intending to grant amnesty to. And what I will add once again is underneath those literal decisions is this huge base layer of the foundation, which those literal decisions were sitting on, that we must never forget. Some people gave away their power and bought into deception as though it was truth because they were emotionally persuaded to do so. We must never forget that. And if we just forgive the base layer on top of that, then we forget, oh, there's a whole foundation of empowerment underneath. And this lady, the author of this article, she's catching so much flack on social media, which I love, because we know history that's forgotten about will absolutely repeat itself. And people who need to be held accountable, in my opinion, principally the tyrants for their deception, as well as individuals need to be held accountable. We need all look at ourselves and each other and say, like, if you were making dumb decisions, that hurt your children, that impaired their psychological development. You hurt yourself and your family by staying disconnected from them. We need to acknowledge, like, that's your fault. You need to be held accountable for your free will, outsourcing your truth, which then compelled your actions to potentially hurt yourself and other people and your children. People have to be held accountable for that. We have to acknowledge the consequences of our choices, even when our first choice is outsource my truth. Because if we don't do that, if we don't take the self-responsibility for ourselves, our actions, our choices to disregard our own truth and outsource our truth, then we never learn. That is so important, in my opinion. And just taking a look, Tim Kennedy's response on Twitter: they arrested people for paddleboarding or walking on the beach. They arrested moms for taking their kids to a playground. They censored facts and science that did not align with their narrative. They fired police officers, firefighters, and soldiers for not complying. Then he concludes, go vote, which I think is a really empowering way of looking at that. So with the headline of her article, I agree with those words. Let's declare a pandemic amnesty. If we're talking about forgiveness and talking about acknowledging, never forgetting.
Forgiveness and amnesty do not seem to be in alignment, though. Those are not synonyms from what I could tell from what I just saw a moment ago. The description he pulled up was about a governing body, an authoritative figure granting amnesty. That is not the same thing as the victim granting forgiveness. That doesn't seem to be those aren't synonyms.
And taking self-responsibility for the foundational base layer of giving our power away and outsourcing our truth. My spin, if I said those words, that's what I would mean. And I would agree with the words, let's declare a pandemic amnesty, if they're based on what I just said. That's not where she's coming from. So in my opinion,
I didn't need to cut him off. Apparently, a lot of the shit that I'm saying, he's bringing it back to that. So
Emily Oster is full of crap. Doing a disservice saying, like, yeah, let's just forget everything that happened, and therefore no self-responsibility. Nobody's held accountable for their choices. Tyrants, like the people in the authority, let's not hold them accountable.
Can you learn?
No,
you're going to keep misstepping.
There has to be consequences for our choices and our actions.
Keep causing harm.
And one of the reasons why I love Tim Kennedy's post, how he concludes, go vote, there's a bit of responsibility we all have in this, isn't there? The people that were making at the governmental level decisions that were probably to deceive us some of the time, that's our fault. We voted them in. And someone could say, well, maybe we didn't vote them all in, but they got in, didn't they? Yeah. And that's also partly our fault. We've empowered a system that has allowed that to happen. Now, I know there's so many of us in the freedom fighting community that are taking actions on a daily basis to reclaim the system that we've let go to tyrannical control freaks. And that's great. And I think if you're working hard to make this system a better system, keep tyrants out, call them out when they get in, voting differently, you probably at the core of your being, even if you haven't consciously thought about it, have a sense of, yeah, what's happened is my fault. I'll take that self-responsibility, which empowers me to have the self-responsibility to change what I allowed to have happen. So I think self-responsibility is a superpower for freedom lovers. I think Emily Oster's article, Let's Declare a Pandemic Amnesty, where she's coming from, it's actually attempting to dissuade people from claiming self-responsibility, because it hurts, doesn't it? When we look at cool stuff that's happening and we have self-responsibility for that, it feels great. But when we look at awful stuff that's happening and we claim self-responsibility for that, it hurts. And I think he's trying to talk people out of self-responsibility, which ultimately I think is a very disempowering thing.
It's not healthy.
Let me know your thoughts in the comments section about this article. Let's declare a pandemic amnesty. Let me know what your thoughts are about the article and what you would add to it to make it more empowering.
Should I give it a minute?
This has been an episode of JP Reacts. I really appreciate you watching my stuff. It means a lot to me. You help put food on the table for me and my family. We're going to play out his commercial. I so appreciate you.
I don't know if that's appropriate. I'm being link below to this episode. Please do go give it a view.
Share it.
Watch
all my videos.
Just to support.
You're a tremendous support for me.
The provider.
But more importantly, I think you're a tremendous support for.
Yeah, so this is its own conversation, and I know it's going to be long enough as it is. So I'm going to link JP's video underneath this. In summary, I'm going to put all these together. So I just discovered this concept through this hilarious TikTok style video with this bearded guy on a platform, on a Netflix style platform, just meaning a library of content called Good Lion TV, I think it was. I'd never heard of this before. It's an interesting, what I'll call voice of value in the world, this Good Lion TV. I think that's what it was called, Good Lion. I'm pretty sure it's in this video that you're watching right now. By the time you got to here, you had seen that clip, because I'm going to run this all through the iMovie. But that dude, that was hilarious. The way he was like, nah, bitch, you tried to eat us. Anyway, then that led me to this, and I decided to do this. Closing thoughts. I'm sure there were many. Yeah, I think I've said all the points that I would want to say on this. I just discovered this whole thing this morning, and I did this in real time. So I decided to do a reaction video. I've never done a reaction video before. I've seen them done on the internet. Yeah. So JP React, I was going to say, I don't know how the creators feel about people doing this, but it is promotion. And I also just realized, I don't know how, like, this guy is JP Sears, right? And I was like, I don't know how he feels about me doing this, but this is actually that channel. JP Reacts. What I'm doing right now is what that channel is all about. JP, this redhead cat, he pulls up a YouTube video, watches the video with you in picture like I'm doing right here. So obviously this dude's cool with shit like this, because this is what he does. So I don't feel bad about doing what I'm doing, because the artist is obviously cool with it, the creator of the content. Anyway, hey, good morning. Appreciate you tuning in. And yeah, another episode for Shorty Does Live. We're punching them out here, aren't we? Appreciate you tuning in, guys. I remember the other thing I wanted to touch on. I was just trying to reach for something. I knew there was something there. So I'd watched this, I did a screen video thing of that TikTok style video, whatever it was, on that I found on that Good Lion thing. And I had recorded the screen doing it like that. And the reason why I thought I would do that is because it's a behind a paywall, that the Good Lion stuff. And you can share the link. So below this episode is a link to see that video, not the screenshot version of it, but see that video. But in order to see that video, you have to put in your email address. You don't have to pay anything. It's free, but you do have to put an email address in. So my thought process was, when I was capturing it, is I just wanted to share that video that somebody took on Good Lion. So it wasn't Good Lion's content. Like this cat, the bearded fella that I was laughing at, that I first heard this term, pandemic amnesty. This is something that bearded fella had put on his social media, right? But the way Good Lion had taken that man's content and put it on their platform, they took all of his username and stuff away. So I couldn't look him up and whatnot. So it wasn't like it was their content that I was really sharing out. But I knew that if I just shared it via that link that you have to put an email address in, less people would go that far to put in an email address to see something that there was a cute little headline for, like an LOL a pandemic amnesty, you know what I mean? That kind of thing, or whatever I might have come up with on a thing. So that's why I video recorded it the way that I did. But if you want to support that, or if you want to look into that Good Lion thing, which I have not watched any of their films. I perused through this. Somebody shared it with me. It sounded interesting the way they were talking about it. So I got in it and I started looking through their catalog, and they've got a whole bunch of stuff. Like Netflix, there's an abundance of content and videos and stuff in there. I was just watching this little thing on their website this morning. It's my first time really getting into that website and kind of really looking into it. And there's a little something like Good Lion Bits or something like that. And it's like a little bunch of little short videos or whatever. And some of them, there was one on there about French police. They were storming this crowd. So the crowd's here. French police were running up all aggressively, and they got right to the crowd, and they stopped and they back. It was just the that was a beautiful symbolic expression of how this all works. Anyway, appreciate y'all tuning in. Namaste, motherfuckers.